Hey guys, this is Dr. Gonzalez. How's it going? Today we're going to talk about the following topics, and let's just go ahead and get started. The pharynx is a fibromuscular funnel-shaped organ, and it's a common chamber of the digestive system and the respiratory systems, meaning that both systems will share this structure. So this structure extends from the base of the skull to the inferior border of the cricoid cartilage, which makes the lower border of the body of C6, where it becomes continuous with the esophagus. The pharynx has lateral and posterior walls. The anterior wall is going to be incomplete because it communicates anteriorly with the nasal cavity and the oral cavity, and also the larynx. The pharynx has three parts. It has a nasopharynx, an oropharynx, and a laryngopharynx. First, we're going to discuss the nasopharynx. This structure is entirely respiratory. It extends from the base of the skull to the soft palate here on the oral cavity. The nasopharynx communicates anteriorly with the nasal cavity via the choana, which is the posterior nasal apertures. If we look at this particular model, right here in the oral cavity posteriorly, you would see that structure in blue is representing the palatine tonsils. So even though we are going to mention now the pharyngeal tonsils, this is going to give you an idea of how the pharyngeal tonsils could also look like. So these are a collection of lymphoid tissue located specifically in the roof of the nasopharynx, and when it's enlarged, it is known as the adenoids. Another structure we're going to see is the pharyngeal opening of the auditory tube. So this structure particularly is the eustachian tube, also known as the pharyngeotympanic tube or auditory tube. And then this structure is going to have an opening here over the area between the nasopharynx and oropharynx. So this is located in the lateral wall of the nasopharynx, in the medial end of the cartilage of the auditory tube, and this is going to elevate the mucosa. We call it also the torus tubarius. There's also a structure that we call the salpingopharyngeal fold within the area of the salpingopharyngeus muscle, which is what you're looking at right here in blue. So this is a fold that extends downward from the posterior limb of the torus tubarius, and it ends in the pharyngeal wall. So this structure, it's technically going to cover the salpingopharyngeus muscle. So it's a structure that you would imagine is protecting the structure you see here in blue. Also in the nasopharynx, we're going to have tubal tonsils. This is a collection of lymphoid tissue that is around the pharyngeal opening of the auditory tube. In this particular picture, we cannot visualize them, but you would imagine they are nearby the structure that is highlighted in blue. Another structure is the pharyngeal isthmus. So this is a space between the posterior border of the soft palate and the posterior pharyngeal wall. So this right here, it's where the soft palate is. So this structure, it's this space right here. And this communicates the nasopharynx and the oropharynx, and it closes during swallowing. Now let's go into the oropharynx. This structure, highlighted in blue over here, extends from the soft palate to the superior border of the epiglottis. It communicates anteriorly with the oral cavity via the oropharyngeal isthmus, which is a space between the right and left palatoglossal arches. Over here, we also have these palatine tonsils, which are located in the lateral wall of the oropharynx between the palatoglossal and palatopharyngeal arches. The glossopharyngeal nerve is located immediately lateral to this palatine tonsil, and it can be affected during a tonsillectomy. What you're seeing right now is the tongue, and so the pharyngeal part of the tongue is characterized by the presence of a large amount of lymphoid tissue, which we call the lingual tonsil, and that's what you're looking here in blue. The anterior surface of the epiglottis is going to be connected to the root of the tongue by 3 glossoepiglottic folds, 1 that's going to be medial and 2 that's going to be lateral. The epiglottic vallecula, it's 2 small depressions that are located between the epiglottis and the root of the tongue, 1 on either side of the median glossoepiglottic fold. Out of the 3 parts of the pharynx, now we're going to go into the laryngopharynx, also known as the hypopharynx, which extends from the superior border of the epiglottis to the inferior border of the cricoid cartilage, where the pharynx becomes continuous with the esophagus. In the laryngopharynx, we're going to have something called the laryngeal inlet, which is the communication between the pharynx and the larynx. And this is located in the anterior wall of the laryngopharynx, and it closes during swallowing. There's also going to be a piriform recess or fossa, which is a depression located inferior lateral to the laryngeal inlet. The internal laryngeal nerve and the superior laryngeal vessels are located under the mucosa of the piriform recess. And this is a common site for lodging sharp foreign bodies, for example, fish bones. Normally, the piriform recess directs solids and liquids from the oral cavity around the laryngeal inlet and into the esophagus. And don't forget to click on this video if you want to learn more about the information that we're discussing today. And that is it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.